All right, thank you, and welcome to our RecNet Roundtable. This is our special March monthly recording that we have. We are going to be focusing on some women's history this month in honor of March, and today we have three special guests with us. We have a really awesome panel discussion with three past presidents of RCRA/RecNet, and each of them representing various key aspects in our history, and we're really excited to have them all here. So thank you for listening. My name is Annie Pillick, and we are going to kick this off. So our first and our primary guest here that is going to kick us off is our very first president of RCRA, Miss Debbie Rignon. Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Hey, Annie. So happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. So Debbie, why don't you tell everybody real briefly like who you are, what your connection to the association is, and when you first became president.
Okay. I'm Debbie Rignon. I'm the owner of Resort Sports Inc. And I was the founding president of RCRA in 1980, 1981. And we'll get into the beginnings of that shortly. But that's who I am. And how I became involved was just, I had a dream.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, Debbie. I'm looking forward to hearing the story again. I've heard it a few times, but I know it's a really big part of our history, and I'm sure our listeners are going to be looking forward to it. Our next guest is Miss Belinda Tharp. Belinda, thanks for being here. Why don't you tell our listeners who you are and your connection to RCRA/RecNet?
So I am currently general manager for a very large multi-gen community in St. John, St. Augustine, Florida. Been in the industry for a very, very long time, well over 30 years. And I am past president, as you said, served on the board, and became involved my first gig at Sawgrass Country Club. And Jane Norton was a member at that time, and she could not go to the conference that was being held at Amelia Island that year, and sent me, and took a little hiatus, but have been back for, I guess, about 5 years now. So happy to be back.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Miss Lisa Linden, who was served as president on 3 or 2 times?
2 times.
2 times. That's right. Bruce was the trifecta. Awesome. Well, Lisa, tell us a little about yourself and what you're up to, and how you heard about RCRA.
Yes, thanks, Annie. I am the owner, operations consultant, independent contractor for Creative Recommendations, and I became a member in 1991 and then became president in 2007. That was my first term, and 2010 was my second term. So kind of back to back. But then I was on the board and executive director for over 12 years.
Wow.
And I'm still on a committee.
You are on one of the best committees. So I didn't realize that your presidency, I should have realized that was back to back. I'm currently doing that myself, and I know when those situations happen, and it's always for various reasons, but kudos to you for doing that, because it's quite a time commitment. So I fully understand. But yeah, we can get into that a little bit further. All right, so I guess this would be a great segue to kick it back to Debbie. So Debbie, let's take us back to 1980, 1981, and you were down in Florida, and I think I remember you expressing to us that the story started off with you meeting with your GM, and he wanted you to attend a conference because he didn't want to go. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I wasn't alone in that. There were obviously 7 other general managers that felt the same way. And so Edwin Trellew, Butch Trellew is what he went by, was the tennis membership pro director at Fripp Island. And he wanted to get the food and beverage, general managers, tennis pros, blah, 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 executives from the southeast regions of the United States together to network and to create a bond, because back then we didn't have internet, And, you had this big fat red book, which was the only way you could find and communicate with other people. And by the time it was published, it was out of date because people shift a lot in this
Right.
industry. And so, anyhow, all these people that were invited, which was a lot, I don't know the number, but it was a lot of invites that he sent out all over the Southeast region. 7 GMs must have said the same thing mine did. Would you like to go to this meeting? And
Nobody wanted to
I
go.
was brand new, very first recreation director at Southeast Plantation on Captiva. And I was like, oh, you want me to go on a trip? Sure, I'm going. And so I went up there, had no idea what I was walking into, and certainly did not expect that the other people there, 5 of them were all brand new first time recreation directors at resorts from the Southeast. We had Fripp Island represented, Kiowa Island, Innisbrook, Ponte Vedra Resort, and then of course Southeast Plantation. And then surprisingly, and I really still don't understand how this came into the mix, but Ed DePass was there from Eastern Carolina University. So I think that combination of people is just what organically set up what became the trifecta of success of RCRA, which was professionals, educators, and then of course the students came into that mix. And that is just something that happened organically. And when we met each other, we were all just so excited to meet somebody else who was doing what we were doing, because we were all the innovators. We were the first one that left the traditional parks and recreation industry and with municipalities, and we're venturing into this resort recreation arena, which really wasn't even identified as an industry yet. And so we were so excited, and we attempted to align with NRPA, and we weren't able to do that because we didn't have the numbers to qualify for section of NRPA. And so me being the only one with association background said, well, we'll just form our own thing. We really had no idea what we were getting into. It was just a simple statement that turned into something phenomenal. And so each of us, basically, we put $100 on the table, chose roles, and I became the first president and wrote the first bylaws and constitution. And then 6 months later, we had a call for new members. Basically, we put a call out to as many hotels and resorts as we could reach using our handy red book. And and surprisingly, 125 brand new recreation directors from different resorts all over the country, mostly the Southeast, came to Amelia Island Plantation. And that literally was what launched our CRA. And it was an exciting time. And we had no idea what was going to grow out of that.
That's awesome. It's amazing still too. It's 2025, and I remember my first conference just also feeling like I was on an island because our jobs are weird, like there's not a lot of people that do what we do. And when you actually meet other people in the industry that are living the same stuff that you're living, even 40 years later, you still have those same exact feelings and same
Absolutely.
exact excitement. And those conferences are just like, I don't know, they're
Electric.
just, yeah, exactly. They're just something so special. And everybody just, you feel so reignited every time you go. There's something about our community of people that do what we do that
Yeah.
when everybody's together, it's hard to
It's
describe.
noisy.
Yeah. Um, but I wanted to segue to how everybody else also, we discovered it, whether it was through our bosses and stuff, but really what was that feeling though that made you get motivated to get involved? Because I had been a member for many years, and I went for various different reasons, like the new ideas, the connections. I made a lot of friends. I wanted to see those friends. But there is definitely just a big distinction between attending conference and getting all of that versus actually getting really involved. They're two very different experiences. And I feel like for me, my point was the hurricane at Edgewater, which prompted us to have that summit. And there was basically a call to the core members, the 50 of us that showed up, to basically get more involved because they needed help at the time. And so I joined a committee, and I did it hesitantly because I knew how much work it would be. And I remember meeting Carrie Bowman. We both looked at each other and said, "I'll do it if you do it." So we dipped our toes back in, and she had already been on the board, so she fully knew what she was getting herself into. And then yeah, that was the big one. But that was Mary Lou. That was your board year. You unfortunately, I think you were president-elect that year when that devastating hurricane happened, and um,
Yes.
it was definitely a tricky time. I've been on the board during a hurricane. It's very stressful. Um, but what for you when you were, I don't believe you start off as president. Did you start off as a director at large when you first got on the board?
I was actually secretary.
Okay.
And yep, so I did 1 year as secretary, and we needed to fill that incoming president seat. And Bruce said, go for it. So I did.
Oh, and then you didn't look back. You just had to keep moving
That's
forward
right.
after that.
That's right.
Aye, aye. Belinda, what for you, how did that happen? What sparked you to decide to get involved a little bit more than just coming to conference?
I think, well, Lisa Linden for starters.
Oh,
Um, had she, yeah, so during that time, I was president or director at large. Teresa Riska Hall. I mean, we're going back a ways. And she reached out and said, because she and I had kind of crossed back and forth with FRPA in the
mhm.
aquatics industry, going to those conferences. And I remember, and trying to remember, because I don't even know what year I was president, y'all. I seriously, it's been that long. So I think my first conference, like I said, was 87. Was that at Amelia then? So um, I too, like everybody, there was nothing out there. My internship, even though I have a recreation management degree from Flagler College, all of this and realizing that there were other people out there doing what I was doing, um, just, I don't know, it just drew me in. Obviously the people, Jean Bear, Lisa, Debbie. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So, um, when it came that time, had Lisa not been the executive director, there is no way I would have gone down that path probably, but who knows?
That's awesome. And Lisa, how about you? I mean, you obviously have an outstanding career and connection with our association. What was that first spark for you? Do you remember? Yeah, you do.
Yeah, here's the crazy thing, and I'm going to take you back a little bit further. But our dean at Illinois State always talked about getting involved with an organization, and he had mentioned RCRA back in the day. And so I became a member, and then I did my internship at Amelia Island. And then at the end of the year, a friend and I, we didn't get, full-time jobs. And so we looked at each other and said, all right, let's go to the RCRA conference. It was going to be out in Oregon. And we were like, okay, let's get our youth hostels. She got what was it, the AAA, the triptych, that had the map, because we didn't have cell phones at that time. And we were like, we made a whole trip out of it. And once we got out to Oregon, Jim Roush, who was, pretty well involved with RCRA back in the day, he had been our recreation director. So he started introducing us to all these people and said, why don't you have dinner at this table? And it was South Seas, Kiowa, all the prominent leaders of the association. And here's Patty and I holy cow, what are we doing? But I think what really pushed it was After 1996, where I had met Meg McElroy with Creative Recommendations, and I had done some work for her, I was overseas doing a project for her, and she said, Lisa, I can't make it to the Program Leadership Conference in January, and I've promised to speak. Can you please, do a session on creativity? I'll send you my information so that can lead you. And that really got me going, like, oh my gosh, Meg is, she was president, she's been involved with RCRA. It's like, I can't let her down.
Oh,
But I will tell you, at that conference and doing that session, I felt took me to the next level. And I was able to connect with, the members stronger that I had at the national conference, years past. Not that I didn't meet, but it helped, meet the activity coordinators, not just the recreation directors. And so after that, I was like, wow, I love speaking. I can do this. Maybe Meg will help me with, the national conference now. But so that was another great connection. And that was probably my most memorable. However, move forward several years, and Bruce Bolivar came to me and he said, Mike DiBenedetto just said, if I run for president, he would help me. And he goes, but I'll run if you run.
yep. See, that's the theme. We all we need a buddy.
And I said, okay, Bruce, you'll take the lead and then I'll follow. And so that's, just another connection of, okay, I'll do it. And I have a quote later on in our little interview, that I want to share. But it was one of those, it was a Richard Branson quote. You say yes now and figure it out later. And that's, I think, been this whole, my participation within RCRA RecNet.
I couldn't agree more. I
Love
feel like I
that.
have a very similar, well, shorter timeline there. But yeah, I didn't really, you never really know what you're getting yourself into. But you was same thing. Like I didn't want to disappoint Carrie. I definitely didn't want to disappoint any of the four of you because you had all had a previous legacy prior to me stepping onto the board, and I knew what that meant, and I didn't want, you could work hard and you know where you're at, but like you're not quite fully where you all three or four of you are at. So it's a lot to jump in, and you think you're dipping your toe, but you're really fully jumping in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ay, ay. Um,
Well, you
so,
did a fantastic job during your last presidency, and you
oh,
continue that path.
you're
So,
so sweet. Thank you. That means a
Absolutely.
lot. Well, as I mentioned earlier, and I apologize, if those listening will probably laugh at this, but I remember if I said this while we were recording or before we were recording, but each of you, one of the reasons why I picked you to, and I'm so grateful that you all said yes to have this conversation, was you all represent the various decades of our association. And all of the major things that have happened, because there's been a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of really glorious, amazing moments, but we've had our challenges along the way. Um, so I wanted to see from all of you, and I'll just open up to the floor for whoever wants to respond first. But when you were president and involved or executive director, what were the challenges that you faced while serving as president, and how do you feel that you were able to overcome them? This is not a shy group.
I, let me start because, I'll start with the beginning challenges and then you all take it from there. But, our challenge at the very beginning was finding others because we didn't
Yeah.
know who else was out there. For all we knew, we were all that existed. And then, so it became that finding the connections, not only with resorts, but with colleges. And then, growing into what was then called leisure recreation back in the early 80s, but it evolved into an actual recreation and then eventually hospitality degree. But so that was all, getting the students and then bringing it from the ground up. So that was our biggest challenge. And definitely it was a say yes now moment. There's no doubt about that. And we had a lot of overcoming objections to deal with at that time. Not so much with the people that we met, but with the general managers that we were trying
Yeah.
to work with. And that objection was, I've never heard of such a thing. You know, that's ridiculous. And, you know, recreation at a resort had prior to this been something that was given to a tennis pro or a golf pro, or sometimes even the executive assistant of the GM as a summer part-time gig that they had to take on begrudgingly. And so when we got in there and coming from recreation backgrounds and really started creating professional programs and then bringing in trained students, it really was the beginning. We didn't know this, but was the beginning of a whole wave of creating an industry. And to me, I get goosebumps when I say this. This is when I get a little verklempt. But little did we know that we literally changed an industry. RCRA changed an industry. And not just at the beginning, but all the way through. I mean, the phenomenal growth, the breadth. I mean, there's international clients now, international members now. So who would have thought? Certainly not us, you know. But that to me was that's the pinnacle of what I think RCRA Breckneck is about. Is that all of the people from the beginning to the current, and now with the rebranding with Brecknet and taking it yet in another direction, which is necessary to rebrand because the industry changes and, you know, the reach is changing and we have to change with it. But it's all, we are still innovators. We're still phoenixes coming out of the ground, and we're still creating the recognition and the value of professional recreators throughout the world. And kudos to everybody who's ever been involved, because you're a part of that movement.
And Debbie, I'm going to take on, just because those conversations that we had, you know, 20 years, 30 years ago, we're still having those great conversations, just moving in different directions.
Absolutely.
But at least we're all going through the challenges, the successes,
Yep.
you know, which is so fantastic.
And that's what makes it exciting. It's constantly changing. And so good for us that we have the creativity and the inspiration to change with that movement and to keep bringing more to the table.
Right.
Mary Lou, you had two very, I mean, outside challenges that
Yes.
happened during your
Yeah.
presidency. One of the most epic things that's happened, I think, to all of us too. But why don't you share what that was like? I mean, I was on the board with you for the latter half, but you know, I wasn't in the. I was a director at large at the time. It was actually my first year on the board, so it was a different experience, I think, than most would have. And you know, not that we were sheltered from it, but you were in the core decision making and having to figure it all out with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't envy
So,
that.
so what Annie's referring to is the hurricane that did come through and wiped out the nearby town where we were about to have conference in Edgewater, Florida. And it was scary. It was definitely scary, and I think scary for everyone, because out of 40 years of Herstory national conferences, not one had been canceled in 40 years. So even having the ability to call on the Debbies, the Lindas, the Belinda, any of our, you know, prior people, they were like, I don't know. I don't know what you do. So I think the biggest thing that helped get through that, help the association get through that, is pulling together that planning conference that we did, the 50 members that were ready and willing to give to the association. We knew we needed to give to the association versus allowing the association to do what it had been doing for 40 years. And it was so great to still be able to pull everyone together for that, even though it was just a handful of people, because it brought together minds that were able to think a little bit differently, think about the association a little bit differently. And I think that had so much weight to it. There was a lot of back and forth on the board at that time about getting together, about doing something virtually instead, or about doing nothing at all. And there were a handful, and it came to a vote, and we ended up winning, and we were able to bring together the 50 people to do that for the association. And I think that was the seedling of where to go from here, the future of the association and the change that needed to happen. And I couldn't have done that without such core, leadership of the board members at that time. And then we even planned the next national conference all together with a board that had never been to the next location. So that was a challenge in itself too. Only two of us had ever been to that location. And I think it still went pretty well out in Interlachen in Colorado, which was
That's right.
even a new destination for us.
That was a fun
Um,
conference.
yeah,
It was a
it was
great conference.
well, thank you. And we were just really pulled together and we listened to the members and put out surveys, and that really helped to get the feedback, to have it in writing what people want, to be able to make informed decisions.
And
I credit Carrie a lot too, because she's taught me that as well. She's like,
Yeah,
if you're not sure what to do, you always reach out to the past board members, past presidents, the people that are really invested. She's like, but also ask the members. They're the ones that are going to really help guide you. And she's always right in those situations. So yeah.
And if I could chip in there real quick, Mary Lou, I just kudos to you for being brave enough to have that planning workshop, because I know the discussion that was around what to do and all that kind of thing. And you stepped out, and we didn't know it then, but we know it now. It was the perfect time to
Mhm.
stop, regroup, reevaluate, and create a new direction. So it actually turned out to be for the better that
Yeah.
that happened. And I just thank you so much for being brave enough to take that step to have that moment in
Yeah.
time.
It's
thank
very
you.
stressful. And then and I hope this doesn't sound terrible, but you were, on the board when the pandemic hit, and you were a past president, and you had another, not only like something unique to our association, but this was happening to everybody around the world. And so you had one catastrophic situation, and then it was your past president term, right? It was you were
I
like
believe so.
you were ending
Yep.
it, yeah. Which
Hmm.
for anyone that's ever been a past president, that's supposed to be, I don't mean to say this like to downplay what you're doing, but like the easier, like you built your conference, you led the crew. Now you're like training everybody to then pass it off to the next group and focus on the awards and do all that great stuff. And just kidding, this, the international pandemic decided to encroach in what was going on, which that led to a whole other thing that we've never done before. So, yeah.
I honestly feel like I blocked it out. I think I blocked
Oh,
out that whole year as
oh,
my past presidency. Yeah, because that was just there was so much happening that year. Um, and that was the year I got pregnant with my
yeah,
first son.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, we turned to being online for our meetups. We were doing idea share calls. We were doing everything. And then we had our
that's right.
first digital conference ever, I remember sitting at Mohonk because I was the person behind the scenes that was like letting people in and out of rooms as we were doing breakouts and stuff. And I had a hotel, they gave me a hotel room. They let me do that as we were, because I was on the board that year with you. And it was just a surreal situation. And we were just trying to make the best of a worst, terrible situation that we possibly could. And I just always remember that time, RCRA and RecNet, well, RecNet now, but it was RCRA at the time, just being a sense of joy for me, because it was like a guiding light. Like there was all these crazy things going on. My kids are learning, they're in like fourth grade or fifth grade, and they're on a computer trying to learn science or whatever the subject was. And my husband's trying to teach chemistry from home too. I didn't have a job for a little while, but then I did have a job. So then you're trying to figure out all of that. And I'm in New York, so it was pretty intense, I think, compared to some of the other states too. So it was, I just remember always
Yeah.
thinking back, just being like, thank goodness I was a part of this association at the time, because it really helped keep me like calm and steady. Like I love getting on those calls and seeing everybody's faces. It was crazy. So yeah.
Mary,
Lisa, oh,
I give
sorry.
you kudos because I think even during COVID and having that having the conference online, everybody was so more in tune, like listening.
Mhm.
They wanted to ask specific questions. It was like you had everyone's attention, and to be in the breakout rooms, to go, back and forth. It was huge. And I think people just listened more, and they wanted to share their ideas more, and they were present, which was great. And even, I mean, doing the awards online and
Oh,
sharing the
yeah.
awards, beforehand, so that they could share their awards, with the group. That was a different but fun way of doing it. And I thought it brought all of us together. And after the conference, we did the social
Yeah, yeah,
afterwards,
yeah.
and everybody who could still hang out got to stay on and catch up. And yeah, so well done, Mary Lou, for sure.
Well, thank you. That brings back a lot of memories. I'm just so grateful that we were able to pull that off and technology was at our fingertips.
Yeah.
And now I do remember many monthly board calls, just the unknowns, and really kind of just focusing on making sure that our members were healthy, mentally, physically. We did a lot of check-ins at that time, and it was from call to call, everything was different. Week to week, everything was different.
Yeah.
So we kind of just paused a little bit until we were able to pull together. All right, so we're going to do this virtually, and here's how it's going to work. So that was a fun time.
Now you can
Fun
say
in
that,
quotes.
right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and
even to have
it's
the
just so
vendors.
fitting too that we're 5 years from
Yeah.
that moment this month. And I've been seeing a lot of stuff on social media about 5 years ago, me 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and reminiscing on that. And it is truly amazing where we are 5 years later as an association and as professional members.
So crazy. So I think back, I'm in my second term now as president, and I still feel like I have a lot of work and stuff that I want to do, and because I'm still obviously entrenched in it. But when you all look back, what are you most proud of during your president? Like, what were the milestones and achievements that you think back and you're like, that was awesome. I was really proud of that, or I was really proud to be a part of whatever. Is there anything that stands out to you all, Belinda?
Absolutely, 1000%. Is not letting the association, cave in financially. There were days where, Lisa and I are counting our vacation funds, and, are we going to make a cash deposit into the account? And, how are we going to get through this? And I think everybody here probably knows, but the company I was working for at the time, East West Partners, when I was at Eagle Harbor, Kathy Pearson, the chief financial officer, she knew what this association offered. Because I would go to the conferences, I would take my team to the program leadership in Orlando, and they would come back and they were, jazzed up and energized and implementing everything they had learned from Lisa and Nancy Donnelly, arts and crafts 101. And she came to me one day and she's like, what's happening with RCRA? You're not talking about it very much these days, and you're the president. And I thought, we would, have all this grandioso updates. And I said, well, unfortunately, we're at a point where financially, I don't think we're going to make it, for whatever reason. There were a lot of reasons back then. And she point blank asked me at that time, what will it take to keep you afloat?
Oh,
And I went, and Steve and Lisa and I think, went through everything, and I gave her a number, and she wrote a check for that amount of money
wow.
and never once asked for any of it. She said, this is not a loan, this is a gift.
Wow.
Because what you guys have done for East West Partners and Eagle Harbor is well worth whatever number you would have given me. And I'm thinking, well, dang, I should have given her a higher number. But, so, without Lisa and Steve and the rest of the board at that time, and, most especially Kathy Pearson, and I still, when I see her, we talk about it. RCRA comes up. I was with her in May, and, I'm like, yeah, we're getting ready to go through this rebrand. And she always asks. So,
That's great.
yeah.
That's amazing. I never knew that, Belinda, and I can't look at Lisa, so I'm only going to look at you because this is going to make me upset. But um, that's an incredible, and I feel like we have a lot of moments like that where people really stepped up in the association, like Steve, I know, and Amanda, over the years. Those are two names that I've been told from various stories of personal time and finances that they've contributed to just keep us afloat over the years. And Kathy, if you're listening, thank you, because I wouldn't be here if you didn't do what you did. So,
I will see her. I will see her April 10th. We have a
oh,
East-West girls road trip to Nashville. So,
oh, that sounds awesome.
yeah,
I love that. That gives me goosebumps and makes me cry, Belinda. I did not know
yeah,
that part. And
Oh,
but it's a testament to how that creating the value and credibility at a general manager level worked, and besides Kathy, I had personally called other GMs during that time, and they all said the same thing, how can we help? And
oh,
I know I was able to raise $10,000 by calling other general managers and getting them to pitch in as well. And I just was so pleased to know that it meant that much to them. Just as I'm sure I love hearing that story. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you,
yeah.
Kat.
oh, that's a hard one to top. Does anyone else have any other proud moments they had while they were president or milestones and things that happened that they were a part of that you want to share?
I
At
just
least I'm sure you do.
well, the crossover of being executive director and president, the thing that comes to mind first is I didn't give up.
Well,
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the truth.
yep,
And
That is the truth.
and
Yeah.
going back to, one of the challenges of just not giving up, and I'm sure all of us as president has experienced, because you go through the struggles, is keeping the board communicating. And even if one person is going through a tough time, we are all there to support that person. They just have to communicate to us that, hey, I can't, this month is tough for me. If you guys could cover, that would be great. Because even in my second round of presidency, I had to take a little time off to focus on work. And I said, I'm going to be absent for about a month. And if you guys can help me out, and everybody was there for me. And just to get the board to realize we will cover for you, don't just ghost us or don't answer your calls or not be present. Just let us know, and we are there for you. And I think as members of RecNet, we're the same way. We are there to help one another. I always say caring is caring. So, we're there to, yeah, help a sister out when in need or a brother out when in need. So not giving up was one thing for sure that comes to mind.
Huge. Yeah.
That's very inspiring.
And Belinda, that goes back to you were president obviously in the early 2000s.
yep.
And I was executive director. And we had a tough, I mean, it wasn't as tough as Mary Lou had, but we just had, we were coming into, I was the new executive director, so we had some challenges to get through. But then we also had 9/11 and our
Oh
first,
my gosh, yeah.
a couple months after that. And it was like, do we continue this? Are people going to be able to come? And
Yeah.
I think putting together RCRA bananas and pajamas brought humor and color time was there to provide pillowcases so that during the conference everybody got a pillowcase and they could color it.
Yep.
It was just it brought humor and fun and we faced the reality, but we got through it together.
That's awesome. Um, is there anything that looking back that any of you wish you had done differently while you served on the board? I mean, there I have I don't know if I would share some of mine right now, but just I feel like maybe I should have jumped on something sooner or pushed it a little harder. And um it's hard because I think back and I'm happy where we are, but then other times I look back and I'm like, maybe if I had said something, or we would have avoided some unnecessary stress or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one, I know.
It is a hard one, and it was so long ago for me that, it's just a blur.
No worries. And it's hard too because, you're we've been so positive too, so we don't want to I think everybody just did the best that they could with the time that they had. I mean, we're all volunteers, and um it really depended on the circumstances too and the people that you had around you. So yeah, I mean, I I I'm proud of the time that I've had so far on it. So it's hard, but I think as leaders and also as women, sometimes we question what if we're doing everything the right way, and we tend to be people pleasers. So it can be a little tricky to not feel like what we did was the right thing sometimes. So, but I'm sure everybody did the best that they can. So is there any advice that you would give any young leaders or future leaders about becoming involved in RecNet, whether it's joining a committee or stepping onto the board? Anything that you would share with someone who might be getting the little bit of spark to kind of help push them along?
I'd love
I
to
think
talk to
Lisa,
this one.
oh,
Yeah.
go ahead, Mary Lou.
So I know I missed the beginning of the call, but I got started with RCRA many moons ago um, as a student, and that's where a lot of our seedlings start from with the association. And it's scary as a student because you're surrounded by very strong, independent, and women. Like, I can't even believe I'm sitting in this podcast with the four of you right now.
Oh,
I never thought that would happen. And, as a student, there's so many women that are looked up to in our association, and men, but a lot of strong, independent women. And I saw that and I felt that as a student. And it's one of those things where you're in the right spot at the right time with the right people. And it's something that you continue. And I would say to, students getting into the industry or thinking about coming to national conference, do it. It's your ticket to your future.
Yeah.
It's the ticket to line up your career. It sets the ground running for everything. I was able to actually meet my future husband
oh,
by doing a practicum at Tradewinds. And I never would have thought, leaving Pennsylvania, heading to Florida, that I'd meet my husband in 5 days and fall in love. And the rest is history 2 kids later. So that could be your story. And it's so inspiring that there's a tiny little association that started from such a small idea that has such a major impact, not only with careers, but personal lives too. And it's just the possibilities are endless. If you're looking to move into becoming a GM, a lot of GMs even get their start in recreation. If you're looking to get into marketing, the possibilities are just absolutely endless. And getting more involved is gonna feel like more on your plate, but it really just refuels you. It really fills you up. It's what you're missing in your life if you're searching for that next step of opportunity. So
I
that's all I have to
couldn't
say.
agree more, especially with the last part of what you said. I mean, that's exactly how I felt when I hopped on that committee. I was super nervous. I wasn't a student, I was a professional at the time, but I knew that I needed something else, and it was the best professional training I think I've ever received outside of just my mentors in my life, like Heidi Jewett and my boss Alex Sherwood, who've always been there for me. But like this exposure to all of you and like the rest of our association, just doing small things like Mary Lou, like we were working on when I was on the committee, we were working on the mentor program at the time. And
Mhm.
I remember just doing like little bits. And like the more I did, the better I felt. And then it was like, well, can you guys host these monthly calls? I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And it was so fun. And I got to meet so many people. And every time I did a little bit more, I looked back and was like, wow, I never would have thought that I would have done as much as I've done. And, you know, speaking at conference is a whole other level too. That's always really an interesting and fun thing. But I remember saying to Lisa Jennings one day, if you had said to me, you know, 10 years ago, me, a version of me, that you were going to be president of this association, I would have laughed. I would have 100% laughed in your face and like, that's absolutely ridiculous. I don't do that. I don't know if any of you knows, but like I do not enjoy speaking in public. I don't like any of that kind of attention. I get very nervous, but you know, if I have to, I will. But this has really helped move me along and build my confidence over the years and just the support and hearing everybody. It's a really special thing. So I very much agree with you, Mary Lou, on that one. So yeah.
Mhm.
I think RCRA, it's such networking is such a key to our organization. I mean, from obviously staying with trends, you know, in the industry or being able to introduce those to the industry, to job opportunities and just meeting, you know, I met a couple of my bosses through RCRA and RecNet and, you know, to lifelong friendships. But I think the biggest thing, yeah, Mary Lou, you're right. It's how when you're on the board and getting to interact one-on-one with the board members, it helps you grow professionally as well as personally, and just understanding and going on those, you know, mid-year
Hmm.
retreat, you know, you're like, oh, I got to go to the board. No, for us, I think just learning what's going on that, being able to have that one-on-one time with the board members. Obviously, you're growing our industry and our organization, but you're also growing yourself, which
Hmm.
I took a lot away from, and I still do. Maybe it's the longest commitment I've ever had with the
We
RCRA.
love being
Like,
married too, Lisa.
let it go. But I say this, and I think that's why I have such a passion for the awards committee. And I know everybody goes back and forth on that Making a Difference award. It goes back to when I was president, and Amanda Feltz, when we were at Atlantis, and we had Chester Elton as one of our speakers, you know, with the carrot principle.
Hmm.
You know, just that recognition and how much it is to recognize our peers and colleagues and do it in the right way was such a positive impactful, you know, year for me. And now to take that Making a Difference award and recognize one of our members with it, whether if they don't have enough time to be a part of the board, but they're out there changing the
Right.
industry, you know, in a different way, to recognize them for me is huge. And that's why
Yes.
that award, especially, obviously, Debbie Rignon Service Award for me was a great honor. And, you know, and then to get Howard U. Bell's Lifetime Achievement Award, for me, it was an incentive to strive for
Yeah.
more and, you know, to stay connected with the association. So, yes,
Oh.
emotional roller coaster. I get
Yeah, I think that's my favorite part. You know, at this stage of my career, which is now going on the outs because I'm retiring, semi-retiring. But you know, I love the stories from people, of all of you, you know, of how your growth and how this association changed your track in life and or created your path in life. And I think that time and time again, students that get involved right from the get-go. When I say get involved, I'm not talking about just showing up at a conference and networking with a lot of people. I'm talking signing up for a committee,
Yeah.
getting involved, you don't have to be on the board to be involved. You can be in a
It's true.
lot of different committees and learn and interact and grow professionally. But that recognition for the work that you're doing above and beyond the work that you do every day and how that impacts other people will not only create recognition, but opportunities for you throughout the rest of your career. And it will continue to inspire you. And I can't stress that enough. And that was the best part about, you know, the beginning was every single person that showed up there, the first words out of their mouth were, what can I do to help? And if we could get back to that, especially now with it changing, because we need a lot of that, what can I do to help, from the voices that we haven't heard from yet in the new areas we're reaching out to, so that we know where to go and to help forge that direction. So new people listening to this, make your voice heard, because now's the time for you to change the trajectory and to bring new opportunities to the forefront.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think, you know, it probably pushed me to be a better lifestyle director, be a better person in general, not get complacent, you know, set my standards higher, because, you know, I would go to the conferences and get on the calls, and just being around the group of people. And it's like, okay, you know, I can just kind of float through this thing, and, you know, might get a promotion, I might not, you know. It made me want to be a better person. It made me want to dig all in, you know, set the standards higher for any of the student interns that came in, you know, and then trying my best to have a position for them, so I didn't have to let them go, you know, and
That's
go
the truth.
somewhere else. You
Yeah.
know, it's like create that buzz and try and get them into the organization, you know, wherever I happen to be at that time. Because you mold them and you learn with them and grow with them, and it just, everything about it, you know, just set the standard a little bit higher.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So we are winding down. I have two more questions for you all. When you think back, what do you hope that people will remember about your legacy and the impact you made on the association? I mean, for me, I feel like I just want everyone to know that I cared and I was loyal and I really did try my best. And I hope that my goals are accomplished, actually. You know, like I really hope that the things I have in my head come into fruition, and that did the best that I could to try to make that happen. So it's hard from the outside. I feel I don't think a lot of people understand how much I don't want to say blood, sweat, and tears because that's very dramatic, but you know, there is a lot of emotion and a lot of time put into it, and you know, if you're once you become involved, I feel like you become even more passionate, and you typically are a very passionate person in general about stuff, but there's just something about when you're, you know, I'm not saying that being a treasurer or a secretary or director at large is any less, but when you're president, you carry a heavier weight, and it's really it's a lot, but it's also worth it. And I hope that everyone knows that you know, anybody that steps into that role is really doing it because they really care about the association. So yeah, but yeah, I don't know. What do you all ladies think? What do you hope that when they think back about a Debbie, a Lisa, a Belinda, or a Mary Lou as a president, what do you hope that they take from it? It's a
I
tough
hope they
one.
know that I hope they know that everything we did was always for what was going to be best for the association. I mean,
Absolutely.
I remember Lisa and Steve, and maybe Dan was on the board then. I don't know, but I know that we cried a lot. We beat ourselves up a lot. It's like, you know, what else can we do? Where can we, are we not thinking of something that's so obvious, you know? But every decision that was ever made, the association was always first.
Yeah. Mhm.
Awesome. All right. Well, this will be our
Sorry.
last
I'll just
question.
say one
Oh,
quick
yeah, go for it, Lise.
me that she always had a joke and a game to play.
We can always count on you for that, Lise. Could not agree more. And there were good jokes too.
Exactly.
All right. So what outgoing
Okay.
message? Oh, Deb, you got one too.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess I would have to add just trust your instincts, you know,
Okay.
and that is you have a passion and you find yourself in situations that you don't expect. just step forward and follow your passion, because it's going to lead you somewhere good. And because when you love something, and in my case, it was just, I just love being a recreator, period.
Yeah.
I just love being a recreator. And it led to all, you know, the beginning of this. And gosh, I couldn't be more shocked, amazed, and pleased at what RCRA and now RETNEC has become. It's a real legacy.
That's awesome.
It's your legacy, Debbie Rignon.
No, not me. I certainly,
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
not a me thing. It's a we thing.
But we would not be here without you.
It's
Thank
true. You are our trailblazer. We certainly
And
would not be here without you.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think with that statement, Debbie, that is part of your legacy. It's not a me, it's a we.
It's a
And I
we.
think that, you know, a lot of the great presidents over the years, if you embody that, you're not alone in presidency. You have
That's
two
right.
other co-presidents with you, and you work together towards goals, and you lead the board and you lead the association. There's no me about it. It's a we.
That's right.
And we don't let each other fail. Not in
Right.
this industry.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't.
Yep.
Yeah. And we all love what we do. And that's what it's all about, right?
It's true. I do love what
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. And Mary Lou, you're right. I mean, I remember Carrie's still helping me to this day, and we served on the board together years ago, and she said those exact words to me. She's like, I won't let you fail at this, you know, especially when they asked if I did the similar thing where I served one term on the board, and then I was approached about not finishing out that term, but stepping into the presidency role. And they said, you know, we understand what we're asking, and but we're not going to let you fail. We'll never let you fail. And those same people who are no longer on the board with me are still having my back and still reaching out and saying, hey, what do you need? Hey, I'll help you with this, you know, and I certainly could not do any of this without all of you and without all of them. So yeah, it's been a ride. Um, yeah. Does anyone have any last words of advice for the future generations at all that they would like to share before we head out?
I just have
Lisa, sorry, Lisa, you said it earlier and I literally have it written down, and
Oh.
it's never give up. Just never give up.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think I'll take this since I did a quote in the beginning, I'll say a quote in the end. This one is from a previous CEO, Jack Welch, where he said, before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others. And I
Oh,
Love
consult
that.
working with teams. I try to instill that into their managers, just continue to grow the younger generation. You know, being honest, being authentic, being you, but don't forget to have fun.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
awesome.
Love it.
My last thing that I just want to highlight about RecNet and the tight-knit community, which is really more like a family, you don't get with other associations that have outgrown their britches. And with RecNet, you still have that. You know, I feel like I have a family across the country. When my family goes to travel, I'm like, who do I know that lives in Oregon? Who do I know that lives in Michigan? Like, let me see if they're down to hang out, or give me a discount on it. So I think, you know, it's just amazing that there's such a nationwide and now global international feel, but it still feels like home. And I know that there are definitely members that have been involved and have given to the association and have taken from the association, and then they take a break and then they come back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, you know, always returning home should be like. And I
Yeah.
think that is truly amazing, that this association continues to live and breathe that culture.
That's awesome.
Annie,
Okay, now I'm crying.
Oh,
Debbie, it, and I hope you can make it this year, because in 1996 was my first time to Kiowa, and we're going back this year. And I was fortunate enough to, you know, we rented a house, and
Who would ever forget?
and I was, you know, young emerging professional looking for another position because I had just left cruise ships. And, you know, Debbie and I chit-chatted, and the next day she was like, I want you, here's my folder for resort sports, have a look. You know, it was just, wow, another great memory.
Yeah.
And I consider you, obviously, you've always been one of my mentors, but I'm just thankful that you're one of my closest friends too. So
love you. Love you all. I love you all.
This love
It would
fest.
be super amazing if you do come this year, Debbie. I do think that my husband might be coming to the recruit.
Your husband?
And that
Wow.
is the Kiowa is where I first met all of you. So
Oh,
Cool. Well,
that would be
I'll put it on
amazing.
the calendar. I'll put it on the calendar. I'll be there. Especially if we're going to run a house, Lisa.
You have to make sure you bring your tattoos though, Debbie.
Oh, always.
That's for the after hours
mom,
podcast.
For somebody,
Oh.
please bring something to get said tattoos off.
Read the directions
Someone's
before
face.
you buy stuff.
I
Look at
if
your
you
beautiful
come, you get to
family.
see that.
Oh, how
Oh,
cute.
so exciting. Ay.
I love
Well,
sending GMs back home from a conference, Belinda, Steve, with tattoos on them that they on their face and their head that they can't get off. Bear. Yeah.
See what you've missed, Mary Lou?
aw. Well, she's planting seeds in other ways now. Yeah.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, ladies, I appreciate all of you taking the time to talk to me and representing our association always in the best light. And thank you for your dedication to the association and all that you've done and all that you're still doing. And thanks for the insights and the information nuggets that I'm sure our listeners are really laughing and smiling and wondering about these tattoos. But that will be for maybe a different kind of podcast. We'll call it the RCRA After Hours podcast. um, but I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you all for listening. And stay tuned for our future podcasts.
And Annie,
Thank you, Annie.
Annie, thank you for leading us into the next phase of
Yes.
RCRA RecNet, and good luck. We're all behind you.
Oh, thank you so
Yep.
much. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.